Well, with the politicization of religion, Islam specifically, we've had talk of things like, Islamic State, Sharia, Hudud Law, Hudud being bandied about, and that's also alienated a lot of non-Muslims who find this, almost a fearful subject to talk about.
Okay. Firstly, when you talk about Hudud, Hudud is not the end.
Yeah.
It is only the means.
The means, exactly.
It is the means. There's a higher objective of the Sharia, which we call as Maqasid al-Sharia, which we need to attain. For example, the freedom of your religion, freedom of your mind, your life, taking care of your property, okay, your descendants and so on. So these are the priorities. Now, Hudud is here to assist. Now, if I 100% support Hudud, 100%, if it is done the way Islam teaches you. But in order to carry out Hudud, you have certain process to go through. Now, do we have enough judges, for example, who would be just? And then we have to take into consideration the Malaysian context today. Because life is so dynamic. Islam has solution for everything. You take the principles that we learn from the past, from the Quran and the authentic hadith or the sunnah of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the tradition of the Prophet, as our guidance. And my understanding of Islam, when you read the Quran, you read the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, even Muslims and non-Muslims are all protected. Now, in Hudud, you have an allowance for the non-Muslim. Whether you want to be judged according Hudud or you want to be judged according to the common law that you have today. You have a choice. And when it is done properly, implemented properly, I would believe non-Muslim would even say, oh, okay, we want Hudud to be implemented. Now, Hudud is not a law where you punish. No. Hudud is actually a law of mercy. Yes, when you hear about Hudud, it is so harsh. The punishment is so harsh. But in order to carry out that punishment, it is so not easy. It is like improbable to carry out. For example, you have only one reasonable doubt that issue has second place. There's a reasonable doubt. It is no more Hudud. It will fall under ta'zir. Ta'zir is a common law that you have based on the discretion of the judge. But then now Hudud is actually to protect the mass, the people. Now people say if you implement Hudud, those who steal, their hands will be chopped off. It is not that easy. How much did the person steal? If you steal just 20 cents, your hand will not be chopped off. What is the condition, the circumstances that you steal? Someone just was drawing 500 ringgit on the roadside and nobody was there and you pick it up. You will not be implemented on Hudud. Or you are getting very little pay. You don't have enough money to feed your children and that prompted you to steal. Then not your hand will be cut off. No. Hudud is actually to solve the problem. What is the cause of the problem? Let's go back to the cause. Solve that problem. That is Hudud. But this is something that people do not speak, including Muslims who wants Hudud to be implemented. But we are not explaining to the people, to the non-Muslim, what Hudud is, let alone non-Muslims. Even Muslims do not understand what is Hudud. So my opinion is, if you understand Hudud, you will not reject Hudud.
Well, one of the interesting things I want to ask Brother Shah, for example, is one of the problems, I think, with Islamic Muslim society today is the reconciliation between the ideals as prescribed by Islam and the actual social political realities. Because as you said, Hudud is just a means to the end. Yet in very many Islamic societies, we see the name Islamic, from Saudi Arabia to Pakistan to, even now a place like Aceh and most recently in Mali. Okay, why does the punishment actually become the most apparent thing and the most immediate thing that is done?
And that's the fear.
Okay, that's the fear. I agree. Now, when you look into the Quran and the Sunnah, you can look at it textual or contextual. The problem happens is when you look into it textually, without looking into the context. Now, when you do not look into the context, you defeat the purpose. Now, the idea of Hudud is to actually help the weak, okay, and to prevent crimes, etc., from happening. So you look into the rights of the greater people, the society, instead of individual rights, without putting away anybody's individual right, actually. Okay, now, why is this happening? I would say sometimes because the name Hudud is actually politicized. You have Hudud for the common people, but for the kings, for the leaders, different set of law. But Islam teaches us, do not differentiate between yourself and the others. Do not differentiate between the rich and the poor. For example, in Surah Nisa chapter 4 verse number 135, God says, "O you who believe, be just, even against yourself, against your own parents, against your own siblings, your friends, and do not differentiate between the rich and the poor." We got to uphold justice. So if we have proper platform, infrastructure, where we can actually implement Hudud, this will be beautiful. But now the question is, according to whose interpretation? Is it my personal interpretation, or this is what God intended? Okay, if you practice Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah, invite all to the way of your Lord with wisdom, not to your own way. If you invite to the way of Lord, if you find what God says in the Quran, what the Prophet guided us from the hadith, the traditional Prophet Muhammad, we will not have much problem. But now again, it is not our duty to actually force people to accept hudud or anything, but show to them, this is what hudud teaches, this is what we have, this is the system we are going to do. Let people be convinced.